Hello, everybody, it's time. And welcome to this last episode in our series of webinars regarding duty of care. This morning, I heard on the news that we might have a COVID-19 vaccine ready already in January. Fingers crossed. I'm Simon from Safeture, and I will be your co-host for today. Thank you all for your time, and we hope to give you some insight during this webinar. If you have any question or comment during the webinar, please add those in the chat section. At the end of this webinar, we will have a Q&A. However, if we are not able to answer all your questions during the time slot for this webinar, we will of course return with an answer via email to you later on. This webinar will be recorded and sent out to you all. And with those words, I hand over to you, my co-host, Christoffer.
Thank you, Simon. And yes, I agree with you. Very exciting news indeed about the vaccine that hopefully will soon be available for us all, and that we can start the path toward at least some kind of normalization, or actually the new normal, what we like to call it. But a warm welcome also from me. My name is Christoffer Lindroos, and I work as a country manager here at Falck Global Assistance, and I have also functioned as a co-host during this webinar series together with Safeture. Today, as usual, I will make a brief introduction into the incident response part of the duty of care, whereafter I will give the mic over to our guest speakers of today, Mr. Sune Pedersen and Miss Cecilie Jespersen from Falck, who will take you behind the scenes of what actually we as an assistance company are doing, what we are doing when we have an incident, a very interesting topic, I think, for all of you. And then already, as Simon said, we will round it off by a short Q&A session. So, but first, as usual, and for the last time during this webinar series, a short recap on what has been discussed during the last 3 sessions, webinars that we had. We first of all started by, of course, taking a look into what is duty of care, what does it mean for a company, and then took all the parts one by one that are essential in building up a duty of care program. Starting with the policy and planning and training and preparation, and hopefully we're able to give you some good points that you should consider while building up your own duty of care program. And then last time we also heard and very interesting speak from our partner Safeture about how you could build this all together into a functioning duty of care program, and he also saw a live demo into their risk management and employee safety platform. But today we will, however, focus in the incident response part, and of course a part that's very essential for Falck as an assistance company. You could say that is in the core of what we are doing. So the largest part that we can contribute to you as a company, and when hopefully not, but if and when your employees or travelers would be in need of assistance, they have an emergency, then we could give you that assurance that whatever the emergency, wherever in the world, then we will provide them both with guidance and assistance, so that you can rest assured that we will always take care of your employees and provide them with the best possible treatment. And also, of course, to help you fulfill your duty of care obligations. So, however, as we're gonna display here in also Sune and Cecilie is gonna go into a little bit in depth. This is more easier said than done, because of course you need to have a lot of capabilities. There is so you need to be able to provide whatever assistance needed, let's say from medical assistance to more security related assistance. Then we also, as an assistance company, have to take into account that it is different. It is different to provide, let's say, arrange a medical transport, let's say in Western Europe, than to arrange a medical transport in Africa. So there's a ton of what you say nuances that an assistance company has to take into account when arranging medical assistance. So you can say when we get a call into our emergency response center, we never know how it will play out. And also we can say that no, we do not practically have any identical cases. So in order to be able to do what we do, we first of all need to have a lot of different network partners, a lot of different providers all over the world. You need to have from ranging, of course, from the most essential, which are hospital and clinics, to transport companies, to security companies, to legal firms, to whatever we need to be able to provide that on-spot assistance to your employee in need. For example, Falck has a network of over 60,000 providers globally. And then you also need to have a lot of specialists, because many cases, let's say that we are going to illustrate to you later, for example, a medical transport is very demanding. And there are a lot of standards that you have to take into account. So in addition of medical experts, doctors of different fields, you then also need to have, security experts that knows the situation in country. You need to have logistical experts that knows the rules of how you can do air transportations, network specialist who knows the situation in ground in certain countries, and claims related experts. So all these experts you need to have attached to your operation, which of course means that in order to be able to administrate this whole, deliver a certain type of medical transport in a certain country, you need to have a flexible platform where you can take these different kind of needed specialists to the case, the needed network partners, enable to very quickly be able to provide that help. Because within our business, speed is of essence. So with that small introduction, I will then give the mic over to Sune, who will then go into more details of how actually this is done. So Sune, if you please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. So first of all, thank you to the team for inviting me here today. As Christoffer mentioned, my name is Sune Pedersen, and I'm responsible for our emergency response center for Denmark and Sweden. And I'm also responsible for our global network. So I've been given just a little time to go through just some of what we do here today. So it's going to be a bit of an overall presentation, but I hope it will give you some insights as to what we're actually doing in the Emergency Response Center and what we can help you with. So the overall purpose of my departments is actually to keep your employees safe wherever they are. So that's what we go into work with every day as a purpose. But to get into a little more details than that, of course, I'm going to go through First of all, I'm going to go through what we call a medical evacuation case, and I'm also going to show you some examples of some cases that are not covered within a normal travel insurance. So, when the new case arrives in our emergency response center, there are, of course, many questions we need answered in order to be able to assist. But one of the important things are, of course, is the incident covered by the insurance of the employer's terms and conditions. If they are covered, and most of them are, then we will run the case according to those terms and conditions and according to the agreement we have with our customers. And the first example I will be using here is the medical case. And that is one of the cases that are usually covered. So as the slide here says, most medical cases are usually covered by the insurance. And that includes, but is not limited to, in- and outpatient treatment, surgeries, medical evacuation, repatriation to home country, and much more. But where I'd like to zoom in here today is probably one of the most complex cases that we have. So there are a lot of details that I will not go into today, but I will try and give you an overview of what actually happens, what is the machine that gets started when we have one of these medical evacuation cases. So for this study, I have chosen a medical evacuation from a destination in the Middle East. We have a 52-year-old male on a business trip. He wakes up in the morning with severe chest pain, and the co-workers of the client contacts Falck Global Assistance and our emergency response center to get advice. Some more overall information is that the standard of care in this country is level D, and remember the classification goes from A to F. So D is what we call a medium quality. Of course, the quality of hospitals are very different also within countries. So that's an overall perspective. And then when we zoom in, you can see down in the bottom of this slide, you probably can't see the text, but this is taken from our network tool, who actually has graded the nearest hospital where this client is situated. This client is actually not near a hospital. So in fact, this will be what you can call a double evacuation. Firstly, we will need to evacuate the client from where they are to the nearest preferred hospital to get stabilized. And then, as it turns out, the client will need to be evacuated again to the nearest hub with a center of excellence for the appropriate treatment. I'll get into details with that here on the next slide. So I'm not sure how much you can see when it comes to the size of it, but I'll just go through the two axes here. So if we take the horizontal one in the top, we have the different steps of a medical evacuation. So here we start with, we have a medical incident, we're contacted, and from there on, you have the different steps going on to the right. And on the other axis going down, you can see the different stakeholders. So we have the assistance team, that is the emergency response center. We have our medical team, which consists of doctors and nurses. We have our network team and our security team, which are all stakeholders in a case like this. In the bottom, we have our account managers, who will also, when relevant, have the contact with the employer of this business travel if necessary. So moving on in the case, after this has been notified to us, we very quickly involve the medical team, who has a contact with the client himself in this case, and there is also a doctor present who can give some vital signs. Very quickly, it is decided that we need to have this client evacuated to the nearest regional hospital as soon as possible. That is quickly organized, and the nearest hospital is within the same country, and that is arranged within the first 12 hours of this call. When arriving at the preferred hospital within the country, the patient is further investigated and treated, and our doctor has numerous conversations with the medical team at the site, the treating doctor, to evaluate the situation, but also to make the plan of what to do next. In all this, our security team is also involved to do risk assessments. Are there any possible threats in doing these transports, or other things that we need to be aware of? In this case, it is decided that there is a possibility that he will need surgery at a higher level than is available within country. So therefore, we arrange for a new air ambulance transport to the nearest center of excellence. Now, for the Middle East, we have the world divided into different centers of excellence, and for the Middle East, Dubai is where you can get the best treatment for that area. Of course, it is always a case-by-case analysis to see where is the best place to transport a patient. There are many factors to be considered here. Naturally, if it is possible to go all the way to the end destination in the first go, that would be preferred. But in this case, that is not a possibility. So the patient is transferred to Dubai. And in Dubai, we have cooperation with several hospitals, and the one best fit for the proposed surgery of this client is where the client is transferred to. Again, our medical team monitors this case very closely, and they go through the data that we received, the monitoring data and the vital signs, along with the treating doctors at the site. The Emergency Response Center are responsible for the logistics around all this. So they're doing the transport, of course, but also arranging guarantee of payment, making sure that they are received and welcomed at the hospitals, and everything is ready for that. In this case, the client is having a surgery, and it does take 8 days before the client is actually ready to be repatriated to home country. Everything goes well, thankfully, and we are able to close the case 9 days after it was received by FGA. Now, there are lots and lots of steps in a case like this, anywhere between 500 and 1,000 tasks in a case that is performed. So there are a lot of background jobs being done when doing this type of case. And after it ends, we do a end of mission evaluation. The relevant stakeholders will be a participant in this meeting, and if relevant, also sometimes our customers are a part of the evaluation. We definitely want to learn what went well, what could be better. And we do this in all our complicated cases here to make sure that we're always up to date in how we actually handle these things. We do have some cases and situations that are not covered by the insurance policy. I'm sure some of you are aware of our model. We handle in principle any insurance company's policies, and we are the emergency response center for instance, you and your employees, and then we handle the insurance policy that you have decided upon. But is the travel insurance sufficient to live up to the duty of care obligations? That is, of course, a relevant question. It is our experience that for most cases, a business travel insurance is sufficient when we're talking the type of cases that I just mentioned here, all medical cases. But there are incidents, there are situations to our experience where the insurance does not live up to the expectations of either the employer or the business traveler themselves. I think our most recent examples are the ones we experienced here during the spring. The global pandemic, COVID-19, as you all know, more or less closed the whole world for travelers, and a lot of new needs for business travelers emerged. From one day to the other, we were extremely busy helping out all of our customers and their travelers. There were requests and demands for evacuations. There were quarantine regulations. There were authorities making new regulations for traveling, for transit, and for stay in countries. All these things were very overpowering, and there were a lot of things for an employer to relate to. And that's where we came in to advise, to help, and to assist all our travelers in these situations. And as it turned out, a lot of these assistances was not covered by the insurance policy. But we were still there to help our customers in this situation. So that was what I would call a bit of a overall speedy walkthrough of one of our services, one of the more important and complicated one, I would say, but gives you a little insight as to what we do. But another aspect that we also handle in the Emergency Response Center is the security-related cases. And for that, we have brought Cecilie with us today as our specialist. So I will hand over the word to her. Thank you very much.
Hello. As I hope you can all hear me. As Sune said, I am Cecilie, and I am a security specialist in Falck Global Assistance security team. And picking up from where Sune left on the medical assistance, I will walk you through an example of how we in the security team would handle a emergency case. So hopefully this can give you some thoughts in relation to both your own duty of care setup, but also illustrate some processes and in Falck Global Assistance setup, and give you some considerations of how you as an organization can receive support and what is important in your internal setup. So this part of the presentation will also take point of departure in a fictional case, which I will present in a minute. But firstly, I want to just make a short comment on also on the duty of care concept, because what we do in the security team is very much tied to that, as usually, as Sune said, very few of the tasks that we do are connected to insurance. But you as an employer must always take reasonably care for your employees' life and well-being on their travels. And to put it simply, you can always ask yourself whether you could reasonably have done more to protect them against any potential threats. Yes, so I think I'll move on to the next slide. So this fictional case is based on country C, somewhere in Africa. Yes, I will first present you the case facts and then go into key steps of case handling in this kind of emergency case, as I will draw to. And then hopefully you can take some pointers with you for afterwards. So the situation is that, as mentioned, we're in country C. We have an emergency rising in this country, And we have the team of Customer X presented in the country. So what is happening is that there are increasing disputes in the country between the government of country C and small semi-autonomous groups. The unrest has amplified over a period of time due to, for example, drought and COVID-19 restrictions. And this has culminated in political and social unrest across the country. Yes. So how will we handle this kind of situation from Falck Global Assistance side? This will mainly be through, we will kind of have different parts, but firstly through monitoring and consulting, and then through evacuation and crisis handling process. So FDA is involved in the case when the unrest is smoldering in the country C's society, and as the steps that we usually go through, as you can see down on the slide, are the step of analysis, of evacuation, or of planning. Analysis, planning, evacuation preparation, the evacuation itself, evaluation of the evacuation process, and potentially continued monitoring if that is needed by the customer. So the analysis part will map out any potential threats that are to the employees in the country. This will of course be based on the time of writing of this analysis, but it will also have a forward-looking perspective to see if we can monitor any how the threats will develop in the coming future. The second step is planning, and I'll first go into the evacuation plan. Here I'll mention now some points that you might consider including, that we will include, but it will of course depend on the situation and and which kind of project that the team members are on in the country. So firstly, you need to know the threats that that your employees are countering and which steps you can take to counter these. This will of course be based on the risk analysis, as mentioned earlier. You need to know the resources that you have to mitigate these threats and reduce the exposure of the team towards them. You need to know approximately, of course you can never know exactly, but how much time you'll have to react and to gain help from potentially providers. You need to know who to contact and how to contact them, who will be able to help you out of this crisis situation. Also, you need to know both the purpose and the scope of the evacuation plan. In the purpose, I mean, what are the company policies in relation to evacuation, and what are the company procedures in relation to that. In relation to the scope, I mean, you need to establish who is covered by the plan. For example, if there are any joint ventures, or that the people that you have out is somehow a part of another project group, would your evacuation plan only cover the people that you send, or how is the relation to that? Also, you have to consider if there are any dependents also represented in the country, and how and when you would evacuate people in different groups, because what you also have to consider is whether you can do just a partial evacuation if you have some very critical functions that you need to leave some people behind. So, or not need to leave some people behind, but so that you can maintain these very critical functions as long as possible. Also, this is important to consider, because it can be very hard to return to a site if you have left it completely at one point, both in relation to your own your own confidence in the community there, but also because the places that you have are likely to be taken damage by being left for some time alone. That is some points to consider. Our next step is evacuation preparation, and that will of course be based both on the evacuation plan and the analysis. Sorry, I forgot to mention the trigger monitoring. Just a small note. This is a list of tendencies to watch in the society that they're in, or that the employees are in, that can indicate when you need to do an evacuation. And that could, for example, be including attacks on Company X's facilities. It could be if there are lack of essential supplies, such as communication or water. And this list, of course, needs to be monitored and kept relevant. But so going back to the evacuation preparation, after let's say that a trigger has been activated and you need to evacuate, then you have to prepare all the, you can say, practical stuff. So the on-ground transport, if you are doing out-of-country evacuation, the air transport, you need to prepare papers, certificates. You need to make a plan to pick up the people who are getting evacuated. And of course, you need to communicate to the team what they need to prepare for and who they're going to expect to meet when they're getting picked up. Let's see. Next step is the actual evacuation. From Falck Global Assistance side, this would usually mostly be monitoring of the situation and tracking of Team X's movements, both, for example, through Safeture, but also by getting regular updates by both team members getting evacuated, but also by our security provider who will facilitate the pickup. And these updates will be on agreed upon checkpoints, so we can follow exactly how long they are in the evacuation, which in the end, of course, should lead to a successful evacuation to assure location. Afterwards, we will, as Sune mentioned in a medical case, do an evaluation of the process, and that would include both the company's stakeholders as well as key personnel in the evacuation and our internal processes. To make sure that we are always getting better. And lastly, I've added continued monitoring. If the plan doesn't include extracting all personnel from the ground, then there might be a need to continue to monitor the situation and to see if you need to pull them out too at some point, or also if you can bring your people back to the site as you remove them from. So that was a quick overview of a fictional case. As you might have got the impression of, there are many steps, and evacuation doesn't always, or maybe rarely, play out as nicely as I've just sketched out. But we need, or you need, everyone who might be in a situation where they have to facilitate this, need to consider these steps and to be ready to adjust and adjust the plans that we made. So we need to do proper situational management. We need to firstly prepare to do analysis, to make our plans, to know what the situation is. We need to know who to contact. How can they help us? How much time do they need to be contacted beforehand? That is of course what we, for example, do if we get such a case with our customers. We are like an easy, as soon as Christoffer said, one point of contact to get easy hold of our competences that we both have in-house, but also we draw from our global assistance and security network. So in principle, we can help you both prepare and to stay prepared in case that an emergency situation should occur. So to sum up, still a duty of care is of increasing importance and increasing focus, especially since COVID's arrival. A lot of people has turned their attention to that. So the employees and the employers, for that matter, can travel with confidence that their safety is handled no matter where they are in the world. And with that, I will hand the word over to Christoffer again.
Thank you, Cecilie, and also thank you, Sune, for this excellent insight into our assistance or incident response. And I think it's even though these were fictional cases, then late during this pandemic, as Sune has said, that we had been dealing with many different kind of very and complex cases all over the world. But I think we have come to the last part of our in this webinar, to the Q&A session. And if you have any question, then please write them there in the chat box. And of course, if you don't have any questions, then you are also free to submit them later to us. And of course, if there are something we cannot answer immediately, then we will try to come back as fast as possible.
I think we have a question here. Do you cover operation in Iraq? If yes, would you share on TACT, please?
Yes. So at this point, I think the best one to answer this question would be Cecilie.
Yeah. So I think we avoided the echo now.
Yes.
Operation in Iraq. I don't recall whether we which contacts we have there. I think that's what the question are revolving around, just from the back of my head. But but we can surely look into it.
Yes, hello, this is Sune. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Sune.
I'm also responsible for our global network. We do cover operations in Iraq. We've had several cases there, also with evacuations. I can definitely talk to you about our contact there. So maybe after this session, I can just write you an email and we can discuss that further.
Yes. So we can definitely share that with you. I think the question comes from Arun later on, that Sune can answer that. And then I think, Simon, if that was, I cannot see any further questions, or are you seeing more than?
Yeah, we have one more question from Ole.
Oh.
Thank you for an interesting presentation. How well are you covering a worldwide assistant? Where are you strong and where are you not so strong?
Well, I think this again goes a little bit more to the global preparedness and global network. So Sune, would you again answer that question as head of our global network?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you, Christoffer. Well, it also depends on what types of services are we talking. Worldwide assistance, we do cover for both medical and security service worldwide. Where are we strong and where are we not so strong? Naturally, where we have the highest volume, we are the strongest, but actually we have our network. And as Christoffer mentioned, we have 60,000 providers covering the whole world. And in those providers, we have also local agents who have their own providers. So we are actually covering the full scope of the full world. I'm more than happy to talk about specific destinations or regions if you want to get a closer insight into that.
Yes, and I think it's again fair to say that as customers, of course, insurance companies are our core customers. They have corporate travelers. Very large international corporations are our customers. We have governmental customers. So I do not think, me recalling that we would have any country destination where we would not have done an assistance cases. It's just how the world works, that it's so connected that let's say assistant was easier in the 80s when travel was limited, but now you just, as a global assistance company as Falck, you need to have an wide-ranging network. You need to be able, it's not just for us, it's for all our competitors. You need to be able to provide whatever assistance needed wherever that is needed.
You have a following up question from Ole. Are you vetting 6,000 providers?
It
Sune.
is for me again.
Yes.
Thank you for that question. No, we're not personally vetting 60,000 providers. Of course not. But we of course do have a vetting process, and we do have that process as a part of our contract with our providers. So some of these providers are being vetted by other agents of ours.
And Sune, it's fair to say that 60,000 all in all, but then we are categorizing that we have preferred providers, and you can say that of these 60,000 on a more regular basis, we are perhaps using 20-25%, so about 15,000 providers. Would you say that's
Right.
Yeah, exactly? So there are many times, some are more preferred, more used than other providers.
I think, Christoffer, that was the last one. So thank you all for good questions, and hopefully you have got some good key takeaways from this webinar. And thank you, Christoffer. Thank you, Cecilia. And thank you, Sune, for today's webinar.
And thank you, Simon, as well.
And once again, thank you all in the audience for tuning in for today's session. I hope you all stay safe and take care.
Yes, take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Safeture, the world's leading employee safety platform.